This is Unit 5, Lesson 3. We're still on quadratic equations. We're going to be solving quadratic equations. Make sure you can see that. By completing the square. So again, our solution has the same meaning. We're trying to find where this graph hits the x-axis, but the way that we're going to find it is different. The first method I taught you was graphing by solving. Second method was solving by factoring. And this method is solving by completing the square. So let's take a look at number 1. The directions will say solve. All right, so your first step is you have to have the constant on the other side of the equal sign. So I have to take that 16 and move it over. That has to be your first step. I'm going to take this and bring it over here. So I'm going to add 16. I've got x squared plus 6x is equal to 16. I have a little space there. You don't necessarily have to. I just do that. Okay, so now this is very procedural. You have to kind of keep up with what I'm doing. You may need to rewind this a couple of times to make sure you've got it correctly. But you're going to take this, that linear term, and divide by 2. I should say 2. You take the coefficient of that linear term and divide by 2. And you're going to take one of the x's. See how it says x squared? You're only going to take one of them. And that square goes on the outside. I'm really abbreviating a lot of these steps just to kind of simplify what we're doing. So you take one of the x's. There's really 2 here. It's x squared. You're going to take one of them, bring it down. You're going to take half of that linear term, the coefficient of the linear term, and then that square is going to go on the outside. Now I'm going to take this number and square it. Three squared is 9. I'm going to take that 9 and add it here. So take half, square, add it to the other side. We're really adding it here, but I'm kind of skipping over that step, because whatever we do here, we have to do here. There are some times you just have to trust your math teacher, and this is one of them. So you're going to have x plus 3 squared is equal to 25. All right. Now I have to solve for x. So I have to get rid of that square. So before, in order to get rid of a square root, we'd square it. So now we're doing the opposite. To get rid of the square, we have to take the square root. So I'm going to take the square root of both sides. Whatever we do to one side, you have to do to the other. All right, so this root cancels out with this power. I'm just left with x plus 3. Now the square root of 25, it's so easy to just say, well, it's 5. Well, you got to be careful. It may not just be 5. It could be a positive 5 or it could be a negative 5. Because a positive 5 times a positive 5 is 25, but a negative 5 times a negative 5 is also a positive 25. So that's why we're putting both positive and negative. All right, let's set this up. I'm going to have two equations. X plus 3 is equal to 5, or x plus 3 is equal to negative 5. And then you just solve. Subtract 3, x is equal to 2. Subtract 3, x is equal to negative 8. If I were to graph this quadratic equation, it would cross the x-axis at 2 and negative 8. Let's take a look at number 2. I've got y squared minus 6y minus 40 is equal to 0. Now keep in mind, even though it says y, we're still looking to see where that graph hits the x-axis. All right, let's move that 40 over. I'm going to add 40. I mean, you can leave space there. I'm leaving space for a step that I actually skip, but anyway, let's take this number and divide by 2. I'm going to take one of these y's, put it here. I'm going to square that negative 3. I'm going to square it. Negative 3 squared is a positive 9. I'm going to add that over here. Kind of work left to right now. So I've got y minus 3 squared is equal to 49. In order to get rid of that square, I need to take the square root. So this root cancels out with this power. I'm left with y minus 3 is equal to plus or minus 7. So I've got y minus 3 is equal to 7. Y minus 3 is equal to negative 7. Let's make sure you can read that. Let's add 3. I'm getting y is equal to 10. Add 3 here. Y is equal to negative 4. So if I were to graph this quadratic equation, it would hit the x-axis at negative 4 and 10. Let's try one more. Last one here, number 3. Straighten that up a little bit. I've got a squared minus 12a plus 36 is equal to 0. So my first step is to move that constant over. So let's set this up so. Let's take that 36 and move it. Let's subtract 36. I've got a squared minus 12a is equal to a negative 36. All right, so I'm going to take half of this number. I'm taking one of the a's, and that square goes on the outside. Now I'm going to take this negative 6 and square it. So negative 6 squared is 36. That's what I'm going to add over here. So this becomes a minus 6 squared is equal to 0. And that may happen. You may get a 0. It's all right. You keep going. Let's take the square root of both sides. Now here's the thing. You're not going to write plus or minus 0. There's no such thing. 0 is neither negative nor positive. It's just 0. So this is the one time where you're going to have one equation when it's a 0. So that means I'm solving it. I've got one answer of 6. That means, remember, when you have one solution, Your vertex, that means that's your vertex, it's right on the x-axis. So visually, every time you solve, visually you should be thinking of what the graph looks like. Where is it going to hit the x-axis? Well, it's hitting it at 6, that means that's our vertex. If it only hits it once, that means the vertex lies right on the x-axis. And that is solving quadratic equations by completing the square.